sets of VMs.
Okay. And Rob, I sent you a message as well.
Oh, is there another one? Oh, la clave DC y PS también son Ibante 20. Oh, sí, Jaime le contestó. Ya, tratamos para hacerlo más fácil esta vez. Cada persona tiene la contraseña Ibante 20 y también para los 4 máquinas será lo mismo. Por favor, solamente se puede tocar los 4 para usted, no para ninguna otra persona, ¿ok?
So are we good, Rob?
Well, we've got one more. Harold Vargas Moreno. Let me go look at that one. Harold, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Okay, Harold Vargas Moreno. Okay, Harold, yo hice un cambio a la contraseña a Ibante 20 para Harold.Vargas underscore 080820. Y eso debe servir ya para loguear. Okay. Ya hay otra persona. A ver. Giovanni Pinilla. Oh, no. Guillermo Aguilar. Okay, Guillermo. I'll work on yours right now.
Hey Rob, this is Gilberto Heredia. I'm working very well with my virtual machines.
You're good? Okay, thank you. Guillermo Aguilar, I see the machine, I see the sharing. Is it only the contraseña that is not working for you? Okay, a ver. Andrés Villamizar, no llegó el usuario y la contraseña. Okay. Andrés, un momento. Okay, Andrés es Andrés.Villamizar piso 080820. Es el usuario. Eso debe ser. Giovanni, a ver, voy a buscar el suyo. Ok, Giovanni Pinilla, es posible que yo lo escribí mal, entonces yo voy a desletrarlo. Es Giovanni, G-I-O-B chica, ANNY Pinilla. PINILA piso 080820. Esto es el usuario, Giovanni, que se debe utilizar y la contraseña es IBANTE20 con I larga por IBANTE. Y parece que tiene los derechos a las 4 máquinas dentro de BM. So, todo debe estar bien. Ok, ¿hay alguien todavía que no se puede alcanzar las 4 máquinas? Oh, me lo repites. Andrés, a ver, voy a buscar otra vez. Andrés Villegas. Andrés Villamizar. Es Andrés.B chica y R-A-M-I-Z-A-R. Piso 080820. Ya. Y, ok, voy a ver, es posible que yo hice mal la contraseña. Yo voy a hacer un edit ahorita. Ok, ¿se puede tratar otra vez, Andrés? Aldo.
Hola, Rob.
Is, do you need the following rights to perform operation? The entity is invalid. Aldo Torres Canales. Voy a buscar el usuario que yo hice para esto. Ok, es Aldo.Torres, piso 080820. Este es el usuario por Aldo Torres. El link para las máquinas voy a hacer en un chateo. Ok. Y con este link tiene que ser con S. No HTTP, pero HTTPS. Tiene que ser. Ok, Aldo Torres 080820. Esto debe servir ya. Yo cambié o averigüé la contraseña. Debe ser IBANTE 20 con I larga en IBANTE. Y a ver. Ya, y este debe conectar con Aldo Torres Canales en VAP. Ok. Oh, Iván Escobar, yo voy a ser su usuario ahorita.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry for the problems.
No problem. I'm glad you're here. ¿Alguien más tiene algunos problemas accesando las máquinas virtuales?
Hola, buenos días, soy Odín Morales. Sí, yo no recibí el correo con los accesos. ¿Me podrían ayudar, de favor?
Sí.
Gracias.
Es Odín Morales, ¿verdad?
Así es.
Ok, Iván, ¿se puede tratar utilizar este usuario
Okay.
que me mandaste? Ok, ¿hubo otra persona que necesitaba ayuda?
¿Hay alguien más que necesite ayuda?
Hola, buenos días. Guillermo Aguilar, mandé un mensaje y me iba uniendo. No entendí, todavía no recibo el correo con las contraseñas.
Rob, you get that?
For Guillermo
Guillermo Aguilar.
Aguilar. Ok, un momento, por favor.
Gracias.
Guillermo Aguilar. Ok, es Guillermo.aguilar piso 080820. Es el usuario.
Ok,
Y la contraseña es Ivante20.
gracias.
Y voy a buscar otra vez para averiguar que los derechos están. Ya, parece que sí.
Hey Carson, did you see my message?
I'm guessing no.
Rob, I just sent you another message. This is Ivan.
Yeah, I'm responding right now. I've got to go in and make a change, and then I will let you know when that's done. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was my bad.
Not a problem.
Okay, Evan, I just made that change. Hopefully, if you try as that user, you can get in now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay, Is there anyone who cannot yet connect to the virtuals? Okay, and Ivan, I just made that change. Did that work for you?
Negative.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Let me try something else. Yep. That worked, Rob.
Oh, okay. Okay. Great. So I still need to go in and add Carson as someone with rights to all of the 54 sets of machines, and I'll start doing that. Other than that, I think everyone is able to still cover, so you can go ahead and start the class, and we should be good that way.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody, for your help. Appreciate everybody's patience.
Thanks, Rob.
Hey, Ivan, do you want to start?
Yeah. Okay.
There's the calendar, Ryan, right now, when Carson needs to access, and then he can just take control over it.
So who's sharing? Are you sharing, Raul?
I'm sharing for now, and I can see, I'm showing the calendar to go through what the steps are going to go through. So if we can review that, and after that, then Carson can just take over and then take control of that the screen.
Okay. Bueno.
Buenos días. Una consulta para este capacitación. ¿Van a proporcionar guías estudiante de laboratorio?
Sí, durante todo el plazo de este entrenamiento, parte del ejercicio que acabamos de llevar a cabo es principalmente que tengas acceso a 4 escritorios virtualizados.
Sí, correcto. Pero me refería a PDFs como en el curso de Administration.
Sí. Parece que Carson colocó un archivo en el chat. Carson, did you upload the courseware?
I put only the agenda. I wasn't sure if we had anything else that we could put up there. We do have the CTC from Nashville that we could share out.
Yeah, just some guidance they can have locally.
Okay. Yeah, let me take a look at that real quick.
Bueno, parte de la agenda de esta semana, comenzando del día de hoy, vamos a repasar los pasos que usamos a nivel de cuando se comienza un proyecto de consultoría. Parte de eso viene, vamos a seguir e introducir ciertos conceptos, incluyendo la parte de descubrimiento. Mayor parte de esas cosas me imagino que ustedes ya la están haciendo, pero esos son los procesos que formalmente estaríamos siguiendo como parte de este programa. Como ven en el calendario, el día de hoy nos vamos a enfocar principalmente en el proceso de administración de proyectos, el cual incluye tener un entendimiento a nivel alto de la implementación del producto de EPM, las configuraciones que se van a llevar a cabo durante la semana, el tipo de configuración que se estaría haciendo a los agentes, el tipo de entrenamiento que normalmente las implementaciones sirven como entrenamiento directo, ¿no? Para el cliente. También vamos a incluir ciertos pasos en los cuales se llevan a cabo como durante ya sea el inicio del proceso de ventas, el cual cuando uno lo continúa con ese proceso, las partes importantes que se llevan a cabo durante la llamada de preconsultoría. Y eso es donde uno hace el repaso de qué es lo que se estaría entregando al cliente como parte de la consultoría. Eso normalmente se lleva a cabo, bueno, eso lo vamos a cubrir más adelante, pero vamos a cubrir qué es lo que eso incluye. Siguiendo con con una llamada que se lleva a cabo antes que el tiempo de consultoría inicie, y finalizando con el cierre del proyecto y todos los documentos y procesos que Ivanti ha colocado como guías para asegurarse que el proyecto sea suceso. El resto de la semana nos vamos a enfocar en ciertos criterios que son comunes, los cuales nos estarían ayudando a entender cuáles son las mejores prácticas para hacer ya sea la instalación, configuración de ciertos módulos dentro del producto. Y finalmente nos estaríamos enfocando no solamente en el primer entrenamiento que se hizo a cabo hace un par de meses, fue con el concepto de introducir la herramienta en sí. Este entrenamiento se va a enfocar más en los mejores conceptos de cómo se implementa la herramienta en ciertos casos. Como pueden ver, para el día del miércoles, el enfoque del miércoles va a ser la implementación de reparaciones de parches, los mejores métodos. Y eso sí nos va a llevar todo el día para hacer la implementación y los laboratorios que se van a llevar a cabo. El jueves, a un poco nivel alto, vamos a ver la parte de imágenes. Hay ciertos métodos en los cuales depende de lo que se esté tratando de obtener y ciertos requerimientos del cliente. Hay varios métodos que vamos a introducir. De esos métodos, obviamente cada método tiene sus ventajas y desventajas, y vamos a estar cubriendo ciertas de esas ventajas y cuándo es adecuado implementar uno de esos métodos o escoger cuál sería el mejor método. Al final del día vamos a ver la parte del Mobile Manager, de Modern Device Management, que también incluye la parte de cómo administrar los objetos móviles. Y finalizando la semana, nos vamos a enfocar bastante en la parte de reportes. En la parte de reportes, obvio que eso nos ayudaría para poder finalizar los proyectos en los cuales el tipo de reporte, el enfoque sería de poder mostrar el valor que la herramienta que uno puede obtener por medio de la herramienta. Entonces, esto va a ser la agenda para la semana. En lo que vamos avanzando durante la semana, Carson aquí dentro de poco va a estar mandando el material del entrenamiento, el cual se usó en un entrenamiento anterior, que hicimos en Interchange. ¿Alguna pregunta hasta ahora? Bueno, entonces vamos a comenzar.
¿Este material es diferente al que se dio en el curso del EPM?
Sí. Sí, este material va enfocado más a la certificación del consultor que al material que recibiste en la parte de ingeniería.
Ok, bien. Gracias.
Una consulta. El día jueves vamos a estar viendo MDM, Modern Device Management. ¿Vamos a poder hacer el enrollment de dispositivos móviles o solamente vamos a ver parte teórica? Esta parte es bien importante para nuestros clientes, ya que es un plus. O no lo tienen o lo tienen de la incompleta.
Lo vamos a poder ver. Ahora, sí, lo más ideal sería es que si tienes un laboratorio local donde puedes configurar tus propios equipos móviles, eso sería lo ideal. Ya que el laboratorio que estamos proporcionando es a nivel virtual, afuera de la red donde se ubica, sería un poco difícil que configures, por lo menos, por ejemplo, que configures el agente que se lo estaría instalando a tu device móvil.
Ok, pero tal vez Rob o la persona que va a capacitar podría ser él con sus dispositivos, no sé cómo lo han planteado.
Sí, de poder mostrarlo lo vamos a hacer.
Genial. Y este CTC va a incluir alguna certificación similar a lo que tuvimos con el EPM Administration.
Sí.
Genial, muchas gracias.
Hola, Iván.
Hola, Antonio.
¿Qué tal? Buen día a todos. El proceso de certificación, no sé si nos puedes comentar un poco cómo va a ser. Nos enviaron un PDF donde venían 3 opciones que podían ser antes, que durante o 20 días después. ¿Algo así es el proceso? ¿O es un examen? Ahí no me quedó muy claro esa situación.
Ok. Lo que le voy a pedir a Shane que nos dé una introducción de eso como parte del inicio del día. Shane, do you happen to have a slide on the certification, and can you go over it, the 3 levels of certification?
Sure. Let me pull that up really quick here.
And just an FYI, I am
Good morning,
putting
everyone.
into chat the PowerPoints as
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning, with Daniel Zipa. Could we have a recording of this session, please?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. All right, Ivan, you ready?
Yes, go ahead. Actually, let me start the recording. And by the way, whoever's the organizer for this meeting, that's who the recording will go to.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Shane.
All right. So there are now 3 certifications. The first one is consultant, then expert, then master. The consultant one is what going forward after next quarter, next year, we're going to start requiring to work on Avanti engagements. So for the consultant certification, basically you do have to take the admin classes and pass the test. You'll take the consultant classes, pass the test, and then you'll need to do a shadow and mentor engagement. A shadow engagement, and this is for a new consultant, not somebody that's been doing it for a long time. If you've been doing it over a year, if you've been doing EPM for over a year, then we can grandfather you in to one of these, and I'll go over that in just a minute. So for a shadow engagement, it's basically you'll need to shadow either one of our guys, or if you have somebody that's already certified as an expert or master in your at your partnership, then you can shadow them. The next one is a mentor engagement, where you'll actually go out and run the engagement, and somebody will shadow you, one of the expert or masters, be it from Avanti or one of your, again, if you guys have a expert or master at your partner, then they can shadow you as that mentor. The next one is the expert level, and so the first thing is you'll need to fulfill the expert level requirements, and same thing on the master. There's some master hour requirements that you'll need to fulfill, and let me get. So for endpoint manager, for an expert, you'll need 750 hours in doing engagements. And for master, it will be 2,000 hours. Okay. And then what we'll do is for the expert, after you've completed those hours and you're ready to go for the expert certification, of course, you'll have to have passed all of your consultant level stuff. And then you'll have an expert interview. So somebody from Avanti will do an interview with you, and also you'll need to maintain customer CSAT ratings. So if you're doing if you're doing engagements, we're going to be sending out surveys to our customers and just making sure that everything's going well, and so you'll need to maintain that CSAT rating. For the master consultant, of course, you'll have to have passed the consultant and expert stuff. You'll have to fulfill the master hour requirements. For the interview on this one, it's actually a panel, so it's just not one person. We'll have people from support, from product management, and other masters on that panel interview. And then you'll have to, of course, maintain that CSAT rating again. So that's the first one, is just for a new consultant. The second one is grandfathering. So if you have been doing consulting for over a year, or if you've already met the 750 hours or 2,000 hours, then we can grandfather you into one of these certifications, and you won't have to do all of that stuff. You will still have to, of course, have the hours in this one, doing it for over a year. We'll look at one of your project document sets for, either an expert or a master consultant. We'll look at those. You'll need to make sure that you've passed the admin tests and the consultant tests, and then, of course, the CSAT rating. Same thing with an expert. You'll have to have done everything for the consultant. You'll just have to have met the hours, and we'll look at your project documents and stuff and give you an interview. And then same thing with the master. So does that help? Do you have any questions on that? Ivan, do you want to see if there's any?
¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Quedó claro?
Hey Shane, can we share some of these slides with them so they know the process? Okay.
Yep, definitely. And I'll send the slides out also. We'll we'll make sure we have all the links, the updated links. Now, we went to the new Advantage Learning LMS. So all the links that we had sound out prior to this was for our old IGA. And so this weekend we went to the new Advantage Learning. So we'll need to send out new links for everything.
Thank you. Hey, Ivan, let's just continue with the training now.
Okay. Thank you, Shane.
Sure.
Bueno, vamos a continuar con entrenamientos. Le vamos a pasar el tiempo a Carson. Carson, let's go ahead and...
Hey, Ivan, why don't you take this first part of it, because you can do it in Spanish, and it's all of the pre-engagement and scoping and stuff that you're familiar with. Unless you want me to do it. It would be in English, though.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, Carson.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me open up the slides here. And I did put the slides also in chat, so you'll be able to download those. And of course that's going on the wrong screen. Give me a sec. All right, so PowerPoint doesn't want to play nice, so I'm just going to share this out. Well, maybe. All right, can you see the introduction slideshow now?
Scene 8. Let's see.
Guessing that's a no.
No, I'm still seeing your screen. Your screen with all the participants' name.
Okay, well, let's try that again.
So maybe sharing the wrong window.
I have a question. Are you able to download the CTC PPT file that you attached?
Yeah, I was able to download it as well.
Because I can download the file. Show me the file doesn't exist or is deleted. Maybe someone else.
Si le das un clic a los 3 puntitos, ¿no te da una opción para bajar el archivo?
Sí.
Sí, pero no se puede descargar.
Yes, the file didn't download.
No se puede descargar. Bueno.
Yes.
La opción es que le des en abrir en línea.
Ajá, o obtener vínculo, lo pegas en un navegador y ya te deja descargarlo.
¿Y qué usuario hay que entrar al usarlo en línea? Que me pide usuario.
Muchas gracias. Ya pude descargarlo, muy amables.
All right.
¿Qué usuario usaste cuando te pide iniciar sesión?
Hizo el login con mi cuenta de Teams.
Ok.
Sí. O hizo un autologin.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. So we'll go through the quick little introduction slides here. So this is going to be for the Endpoint Manager Consultant Certification. We kind of went over briefly, Shane did with, and Ivan with the kind of the prerequisites for the consultant certification. You do have to pass the administrator exam Also, there is this consultant exam and test. I'm hearing a lot of feedback. I'm not sure. There we go. Thank you. All right. So, and again, we have the shadowing engagement and also the mentoring engagement. So in addition to the exams, you'll also have to first shadow another consultant and then also perform the install while they shadow you and make sure you actually know what you're doing. So if you haven't, if you don't have a lot of experience with Endpoint Manager, that is something that's the previous prereq. It is something you can go back and do. This course this week, we will get into some technical stuff, and so it definitely, hopefully most of you have already taken the Endpoint Manager exam and had some experience with it, but also a lot of this week will also be kind of focused around teaching you how to deliver it, not necessarily, how to technically set up and install and stuff, but more of a process. As a consultant, these are the types of things you need to watch out for and to do. So the consultant training learning path, basically these are the video courses that we have recorded. So when you go through the actual, if you were to take the actual course, you go through these. I'm assuming this is the replacement for that, more of a live session for all of these. And then you'll also have a written exam, and then there's also a scenario exam where you'll set up a EPM environment set to certain criteria and have somebody evaluate that. Okay, the way that this is organized, this first little part, we'll be talking about project scoping. We'll also be talking about a pre-engagement call, so kind of the first initial call with the customer. We'll talk about the project kickoff meeting. We'll also be talking about client communication. And then the last part is the services delivery. That's the part where you're actually doing the work with the customer. So if we see here that we have this kind of broken up, this is the services delivery, because this is the part where it starts to get into a lot of the nitty-gritty, installing stuff with the customer. Today's mostly going to be focused on all of the other stuff, like the scoping and pre-engagement stuff. Now at Avanti, we have an implementation methodology that we've broken things up into. We have an evaluation stage, a planning stage, setup phase, launch stage, and then an adoption phase. Most of the stuff that we'll be covering is going to be in the first few parts. Where this part is really focused on getting work done before you ever really even start doing an install. And so a lot of it will be in the evaluation and planning stages. Some of it will be in the setup and launching phase. Okay, and then we will, there is an engagement flow document. Actually, we probably need to copy that and put that in chat as well. So we'll put that in there as well. The engagement flow document, it basically kind of gives you an overview of what one of our typical engagements looks like. It's not necessarily that you have to do it exactly the way we do it, but it kind of gives you a kind of a guideline for how an engagement would flow through. So let's actually take a look at that, make sure we get that out there. And downside is that Teams, I have to jump around a lot here. There it is. Let me just put put this up into chat as well. All right, while that is uploading to Teams, let me share out this document. All right, so can you all see the Ivanti engagement flow document?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So this kind of gives you just kind of a high-level overview of how to do a typical EPM engagement. Now, this doesn't include a lot of the scoping work that is done before, but the actual implementation of an EPM install. So typically, one of the first things we'll need to identify is in the customer's environment is if we're going to be installing SQL on a separate box, or is this going to be, if it's a smaller environment, it's going to be a SQL Express. And then also, if they are sharing out, if they're using a real SQL server, it's going to be shared, is it clustered? You'll want to make some determination on what they are doing, and also recommend, if possible, that they use a dedicated SQL server. Typically, if we do see slowness in the environment, vast majority of the times it comes down to resources to the database. A lot of our actions are very database heavy, and even when they don't see a lot of CPU or memory utilization, we do use up a lot of disk I/O. So making sure that they have proper SQL Server and resources is definitely something that is a best practice there. When we are sizing out a database, typically I recommend between 10 and 15 megabytes per machine that they're going to be managing. And that is going to change a little bit depending on how much data they're storing. So if they're putting all of the task history from inventory scans into the inventory, that's going to increase the amount of information per node that is being stored. If their retention period for patch repair histories, if they increase that out to a year from the default of 90 days out to a year, that's going to increase also the amount of data that is stored in the database. So watch them for a new customer. If you shoot between the 10 and 15 meg, that's going to work great. Existing customers, typically the sizes are going to be about the same. If you're upgrading from one version to another, you can kind of look at it and get an idea of what the database sizing will be. If they have a DBA available, definitely it's a good plan to let the DBA install it. If you don't, we do often have to install, do kind of a basic install for them. We do recommend a simple recovery mode. And also, one of the key things to do is to make sure that there's a maintenance plan. You want to make sure that there are backups being made of our database. Almost everything we do is stored in the database. Also, re-indexing the index weekly is recommended. The documents that we have out on our community site, the current one actually rebuilds it if it's highly fragmented and just reorgs it if it's just slightly, and then leaves it alone if it's less than, I think, 30% fragmentation. And so it is actually kind of dynamic based upon how fragmented the indexes are. Okay, any questions about the database stuff?
Yes, Carson. Only supported with ECQL. There are not support for the Oracle.
Correct. Yeah, we only support Microsoft SQL now. We don't support Oracle. We used to a long time ago. We no longer support Oracle. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So a couple of things that's useful for the core server installation are something called the alternative data streams. When you download a untrusted being any internet site that you haven't put in your browser as a trusted site. So even Avanti.com could be an untrusted source unless you've gone in and added Avanti as a trusted site. When you download something from an untrusted alternative data called alternative data streams, the alternative data streams tend to stick to files. And we've seen some problems upgrading and replacing files if the alternative data streams is on a file. So when you download the install files, best practice is to go into the properties for the file, and if at the very bottom, if you see a little unblock button, you'll want to click it to unblock it. If you run into a scenario where you suspect that the files have been installed without unblocking it, there is that little streams document. So this one here is talking about the streams. That's a little Microsoft tool. Basically, it can go through a drive and remove any alternative data streams that's on there. We've done a number of things in order to automatically remove that. Now when you execute our installer, it automatically, when it unzips files, it automatically removes that information. Same with our service updates. However, if they were to right-click on the exe file and extract it with something like 7-zip or WinZip, it would see that it's really a compressed file, and it would unzip it and keep that alternative data streams on. So best thing is to run the executable installer. The other suggestion here is Beartail, so you can watch the log files in real time. I've actually never used this one, but it is useful if there's something that you want to watch in real time while we're installing. We do have a number of log files that you can watch. The other thing is to carefully check the server before you install. One of the key things about our product is that we don't renamed at all. We heavily use IIS, and if the core server is renamed, it's pretty much a redo scenario, because once we've renamed, really nobody's been able to really successfully fix that scenario other than renaming it back. So if they plan on renaming the server, they need to do it before the install. The other thing is you'll want to make sure that whatever account you're installing with is set up as a local administrator. You'll want to verify that the server has been set up with the proper amount of CPU, memory, disk space. Typically on disk space, keep in mind that if they're doing patch management and software distribution, they may need more than the minimum that we have mentioned. Now we can still do the install with just the minimum, but they may want more space on there. Most customers, they'll do the install to a drive besides the C drive. because they don't want to accidentally fill up the C drive by, like, maybe they decided to download a bunch of patches, don't want that filling up their drive. Another concern too is during when they're setting up the server, if they have pre-installed IIS. During our install, we do set up IIS, and we set it up just the way we like it. And I've run into a few scenarios where they've pre-installed it. I've had a few where they've had the default website removed. That breaks our install. There's all kinds of things that they may be doing as standard practice for their server image that is not compatible with our product. So we recommend just doing a base install with no roles or features. Let us install anything like that's needed on the server. We also recommend typically, disabling AV while we're doing the install. We don't want AV, seeing any of these files install and decide that it's a virus and quarantine it. We've had in the past some false positives where different AV vendors will sometimes see our files as a virus and have quarantined it. So best practice is to temporarily disable it, at least during the install while everything's very critical. And then also you'll want to check any kind of a firewall. So it goes through extracting it. We talked a little bit about that with alternative data streams. Then we would go through the actual install. We'll go back into this. We do have a section separate for upgrade scenarios and stuff like that. So we'll just keep this part here really high level. Going through and configuring the core server would be kind of the next, setting up any service accounts, setting up all of the COM+ applications, changing possibly like the patch download location, downloading patch content, and typical kind of day one type activities like that. And then our remote is almost every engagement that I've been doing lately has included a cloud service appliance or the CSA. And typically on my first day of providing services, I will be attempting to set it up. Typically, if I have a problem with the CSA, it is usually firewall related, even though we've talked about the CSA before the engagement and mentioned the ports needed. That is something that is often overlooked. And so it's really important that the ports for the cloud service appliance is open and that we flag any kind of a problem early on so that the network team can resolve it. Typically, the person I'm working with, who's going to be the EPM administrator, often he's not the same person who does the firewall work. And so often they'll have to reach out to the network team or the firewall team to resolve any kind of a problem with the CSA, which is why I prefer to set that up as early in the process as I can so that I can identify if there's any problems so that they have enough time. If you allow the CSA to wait till the end of the build process, you may not have enough time to finish it all within the timeline that you established. So it's good to set that up early just to see if there's any problems, even though it may be sitting there for a while until you get to the part where you're testing agents. It's usually good to go through the role-based administration, get their users set up. Then we would do a discovery for their agents, configure their agents, and deploy it. And then at that point, it really comes down to testing all the features, whatever they're doing, patching, software distribution, stuff like that. It may break also if you're doing a premium package. You may be doing stuff like OS deployment, stuff like that. That's really the part where you're starting to get into actual usage of the product. So getting the customer used to the console. We have a kind of workflow on, here's how best to kind of walk through getting the customer accustomed to the console. And then once we get into, the kind of the later part of the engagement, we'll get into patch management, how to go through, define a process for the customer, how to configure it, and then testing and training for patch management. Software distributions next. Typically, we'll set up a few packages, teach them what they need to know to be able to deploy software packages, both as a push or in the portal manager, and then also, how to troubleshoot. And then beyond that, if they have any other modules like data analytics or some of our other stuff, mobile device management, OS provisioning, kind of the more advanced features of EPM, if that's what if they purchased a package for that, that's what it would get into at that point. So this is kind of a good sample of how our typical EPM engagements go, and so you can kind of use this, customize it as you need. But a lot of customers like having some kind of an outline so that they know, kind of what pieces are going to happen at what time. And so this is just kind of gives you a kind of a good starting point to give them, and you can customize it, make it your own. Any questions about kind of the quick high-level overview of the EPM engagement?
Yes, about the script tool, is it necessary to run it for all of patches that Endpoint Manager will be deployed?
I missed the first part. It was something about the patches?
Yes, about the patches and the streams tool that you mentioned. Is it necessary to run a stream tool to all of patches that will be deployed by Endpoint Manager to each node?
So typically I recommend adding, so for example, Microsoft, Adobe, and that to the trusted sites. Typically I've never had it be required for anything other than the core server. It's patches. The ones that we download and we deploy to other machines, I've never have seen a problem. But in order to prevent any possible problem, I would add those download sites, and our best known practices for patching does say to add, the vendors as a trusted site so that you don't have alternative data streams. But as normal practice, we don't run that alternative data streams against all patches. Only the ones that we're applying on the core, only the Avanti downloads for the install or the service update. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So next we will talk about scoping. Let me grab the scoping doc here. And we'll share this out. All right. Great. So let's talk about the scoping. So inside of the course here right now, we kind of went through an introduction and over the workflow of a typical when it comes to case. Either you'll be involved in scoping it, or you may get maybe a scope by somebody to understand into scoping the project. So the agenda for this, the scoping, kind of an overview, the sales interview, and then the guidelines for the packages that we currently sell. At least from a few months ago, it may have changed. And then the types of packages and add-ons. So this is in the evaluate phase of our methodology. So even before we've really started, planning anything out, we're still evaluating the project this step. So at the evaluate stage, we're trying to evaluate the customer's goals, what they need, what they're trying to do, make sure that whatever type of a solution we're proposing to them is going to work for them. The worst thing we want to do is to do a lot of work and then the customer still not have a solution to whatever kind of a problem that they're trying to complete here. So first we'll take a little overview of scoping. So when we are scoping out a project, typically what's happened is, one of our salesperson has gone to a customer, found some interest in using our product, or maybe they've already have our product and they need to expand it in some way. And they will work with somebody who's going to scope out what kind of services can be delivered to meet their needs. So the first thing they're going to look is, okay, what products do they already have? What products may they need? So even though they have EPM, maybe they wanted to do something a little bit more in-depth in their inventory. Maybe they want to pull in warranty info, in which case, they may need something like the Avanti data analytics. Or maybe they want to expand, some of the patching stuff. Maybe they need the patch license or a security license. Whatever kind of an issue they're having, that's part of the things that both the person in sales and also the person doing the scoping needs to be aware of to make sure that whatever we've engaged professional services or one of our partners to do, that the customer also has has purchased the product that can do it. We have had, in the past occasion where those things don't quite align, and it's always a bit of a bumpy road because the customer, as far as they could tell, they've already paid X amount of dollars, and if we scope it wrong, we're coming back to them saying, well, now we need some more money because, we didn't scope it right. So making sure that they have the proper products to do what they need is a critical step in it. Inside of the scoping for the project, typically we'll create a statement of work, and we do have some templates that typically are used, and then sometimes we modify those a little bit after that. Large emphasis on packages currently. So a few years ago, almost everything was time and material. Essentially, we'd guess that a project would take say 40 hours, and that's what we would deliver. Sometimes we were too fast, and we'd have all this time left the customers, wondering why they paid for these extra hours that weren't needed, or the project may be incomplete after we've hit that 40-hour mark, and then you're in contention with the customer saying, well, we need more time, we need more money from you in order to get it done. So one of the advantages of the packages is that they are outcome based. We are basically saying we are going to do these objectives in the statement of work, and that's what we're going to deliver to you. We expect it'll take this long, may be shorter, maybe longer, but the outcome is what you are paying for, not a certain amount of hours. Now, we do still have some idea, okay, well, for a typical basic EPM engagement, it's going to be so many hours, so it kind of, we price them around some of the estimates around that, but we're still guaranteeing to the customer that we're going to be able to deliver this, and that's what they're paying for. The other nice thing is that if I'm able to close out a project ahead of schedule, we're done. We don't end up with these leftover hours that, is going to be a contention point. And also we do still have some, this document calls them a la carte, or a customized statement of work. Some customers, I believe some of the government customers, they have to do the time and materials, they have to do an hourly, and so that's still a possibility, but we're trying to heavily go towards delivering of packages instead. It's actually worked out pretty well in my experience. We also have some add-ons. So for example, they may purchase a standard package, but then also want to add on maybe like OS provisioning or something like that. So we do have a few add-ons, so they can buy kind of the basic and then add something a little additional to it. So we'll go over some of that. Let's talk a little bit about the sales interview portion of it. So typically, at the beginning of the scoping project or the phase of this, sales is going to be talking to the customer, finding out what products they have and what they're trying to do so that they can align the products and licenses to what the customer needs to do. Then they're also going to look at, oops, I think I jumped a few too far, sorry. Let me go back there. So sales interview is really talking about, finding out about the customer, what their goals are, and that should be communicated to whoever is doing the scoping so they have an idea, this is how we are going to set all of this up. And then let's talk a little bit about the actual packages. Before I go on, is there any questions so far? Okay. So let's go through kind of the overview of the endpoint manager packages. So we have 3 levels. We have a basic level, a professional level, and a premium level. So at the basic level, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get EPM installed in their environment, give the customer, the best practices in configuring endpoint manager, get them to the point where they can have an agent, deploy their agent, get some inventory information from it, be able to, if they have like a patch, since they're able to do that, patch manager, it is included in the standard package. Right now, we're basically guessing it's going to be around 4 days to get the EPM manager basic package installed. Now, the things that are not included in the basic level, we actually don't include software distribution. That's sometimes something that gets negotiated in, but by default, we don't include software distribution. Software distribution, sometimes, customers are like, well, we want you to set up 50 packages and do all of this, and typically that's not included in the basic level. They're going to need one of the other levels of the packages for it. Provisioning is also not included in that. Software licensing monitoring, while we may be gathering that information, that's not a focus or one of the deliverables in this package. Data analytics also is not included. Mobile device management's not there, nor is the fuller security suite. So while the customer may have the license for these are not something that would be a deliverable inside of our basic package. So again, just a little chart kind of breaking down the basic package a little bit. We got the, we're basically doing the core server install. May come with, if they do have the CSA, it would include the CSA install, agent testing. We would be setting up discovery of the agents. We would be setting up the agent configuration itself. We would be deploying to a pilot. This one lists 100. I've seen various amounts, that we've agreed to deploy, from 10 to, a couple hundred devices before. We also go over dashboards and reporting, setting up columns, sets, queries, how to run that information out of PM. And then we also set up patch management, configure the downloads, teach the customer how to deploy that software or the patches for it. Okay, any questions before I go on? Any questions about the basic package?
No, thank you.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the next level. So the next level is the professional level. So the professional level takes a little bit longer. Typically what we're adding on is software distribution. That's going to be the major thing that's added on. Also, we typically also would expand upon the basics. So, we may be doing more testing, more maybe like patch rollout, some additional time just spent the product, getting the customer spun up on different subjects. So again, in the scope, this one would include software distribution in addition to everything that is typically found in the basic. This one also expands upon the number of core servers. So since we do have additional time, some customers will want both a test EPM server and a production and do and so delivery pushing to say, although using Portal Manager, different features like that, all of that is kind of falls into the Endpoint Manager professional package. Okay. So next we come to the kind of the top tier. We have the premium package. So this one, typically we guess it's going to take probably 10 days. And if you've done it, sometimes that's not enough, but we estimate it's going to be want provisioning, but they may want the mobility management. And so I do know that that's one thing that they're working on is making the premium package kind of a, choose your own, technology. If they don't want provisioning, well, maybe they do want mobility, and give those packages a little bit of flexibility so the customer can choose whatever it is that they want to focus on, rather than having to go to a custom SAL. Custom SALs take a long time, and they're usually a little bit more expensive. So the more we can avoid that, the easier the sales process usually goes. So that is one thing that I know they're working on, is a little bit of flexibility here. But the deliverables for the premium package, we're doing a deployment out to 500 devices. We're setting up the hardware independent imaging. Typically, there'll be a number of, we'll agree upon a number of images, a number of models to test on. That one usually ends up being a little bit of a negotiation. Then also potentially the data analytics, what the customer wants to do in that, whether it's asset control, maybe it's bringing in warranty information, stuff like that. Also, the environment manager. Environment manager, that is the AppSense technology. So that's actually a different product from EPM, but we do have a tie-in to environment manager. That possibly that's what they will want to have, that little tie-in configured in. Basically, you can use the EPM agent to deploy out the different configurations for Environment Manager. Okay, any questions about the packages there? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the add-ons a little bit. So we kind of alluded to some of the scoping add-ons. So we do have the hardware independent imaging, and we have the on-site right here. Unfortunately, right now in the current COVID that we live in, not a lot is happening on-site. But typically, we recommend hardware independent imaging works better on-site. So if you do have customers that want hardware independent imaging, we do typically price it to include an option for on-site if the customer wants it. The reason why we recommend it being on-site is when you're working on testing out different models, it can be very difficult to see exactly what's happening on a boot screen if you're not there. Customer can, they can get their phone out or whatever, but it's just easier if you're actually there, and you can help them, especially if the customer is not accustomed to imaging. It can be very difficult for somebody who's new to imaging to really understand, when I'm switching from booting up to a PC and I've switched to downloading a WinPE image from Pixie, and then at what point does it switch into WinPE, and what point does different stuff happen. It's hard to mentally visualize all the different steps. And so if you're remote and telling them kind of the workflow, sometimes a lot of that is hard for a new imaging customer to understand. Whereas if you're in there on site, it's much easier to say, okay, this part right here, right now, that we can both see at the same time, we're going out to the Pixie rep and we're doing this, and this is what is happening in the background. It's much easier to explain it while you're on site. But anyway, we typically have this little add-on. We'll create 1 or 2 images. We'll create the driver database. We'll help them with the unattend.xml. We're going to test out a couple different deployments. Now, we typically call these provisioning templates. It's kind of our terminology for it. I know Microsoft Deployment Tool, they call it something else, a task sequence, I believe. Basically, they're comparable. And we'll test it against, we say 4 models. So, and it's also really important that they have the models available to test. Sounds like it's something really obvious, but it is something that if I don't mention it, sometimes they don't have them ready. So always make sure that if you are doing some OS provisioning, to let them know that you're going to need access to those models of devices for testing, and those machines will be reimaged. So need something completely available to be reimaged with data that they're not concerned about losing. We'll create a capture template, deployment template. Typically, we'll also put in some different actions inside of the template to deploy software, patch the machines, join the domain, do all the fun stuff. Also doing the profile capture and deployment, that may be included as well in this add-on. And just a kind of quick FYI, typically we use Microsoft's USMT, user state migration tool, for the profile migration. Back many years ago, we used an IBM tool that ran into some copyright problems, so we've had to strip that out of our product. So now, currently, any kind of capture and deployment has to be done with something else, and typically that's something else that we point and use USMT for those profiles. Okay, so that's the imaging add-on. Then we also have a data analytics add-on. So typically we're looking at additional 3 days. So data analytics, if you've never used it before, kind of high level, it is used to enhance our inventory capabilities, whether it's pulling in warranty info, pulling in data from maybe their vendor, so maybe CDW, or maybe they are, making the inventory information a little bit better for reporting, some normalization rules. Maybe we're using the asset control feature, which basically allows you to store information about devices that are not typically having an agent on them. So stuff like printers and monitors, maybe they're importing all that information from their vendor and they just need somewhere to store it. That's what the data analytics asset control could do for them. So there's a lot of different inventory type activities that can happen inside of data analytics. And typically we think it'll probably be around 3 days. Then we also have an add-on for mobility management. Currently we guesstimate around 2 days. And this may include setting up the CSA. Hopefully, the CSA, highly recommend having that pre-set up and functional. mainly because of that same scenario where if there is a problem with the cloud service appliance, oftentimes it's something that another team has to fix, like networking or the firewall team. So it's really to your advantage if the CSA is already working before you begin any kind of mobility or modern device management is how we label it now. Before we do any of that, we will typically, the mobile device management, it does require a third-party certificate. So they will need to buy a certificate from their vendor like DigiCert, GoDaddy, whoever their third-party certificate vendor is. So that's important that they know and understand that an additional cost and also time to get that certificate. A lot of those vendors, they can turn it around within hours. But if there is any kind of internal politics that would slow down the purchase, that's something you'd want them working on ahead of time. Then we would go through, set up the agents. So like for for Mac OS, we have both an EPM and the MDM agent and how to configure those two to work together, different security settings, different profiles, setting up different features like the device enrollment program, pushing out software to the devices, wiping the devices, resetting them, setting up pretty much all of the basic mobile management type activities for them. Okay, then we also have a software license monitoring module. So basically how to add and define products and licenses. So this does not include the data analytics piece where we can import licenses from their software vendor or CDW or out directly to Adobe. This is if they want to manually add any kind of a product or add in the licenses. This would go through how to set up that configuration so they can start utilizing the software license monitoring on their own. Then next we have our security suite. So our security suite includes a device control piece. There's also an application control piece. There's also a firewall piece that's separate from the Windows firewall. So even without security suite, we have a Windows firewall. This is a separate, our own endpoint security firewall application. So this configuration would be 3 days of configuring it and testing it, probably a lot of testing. Device control is usually not too bad. It can if they're locking down a lot of things and they want to be able to unlock it. Application control is typically where a lot of the time is spent because you want to carefully test application control to make sure that they're not going to end up blocking any of their critical applications, especially with a bunch of different users all having different roles. It takes quite a bit of work to make sure that that is set up correctly. Okay, that brings us to the end of the scoping part of it. Typically at this point, you would actually have some kind of an agreement between the customer and yourselves as to what deliverables would be given. Let me see if I have any examples. Actually, Ivan, you probably still know where to find those.
For an SOW?
Yeah. Do you have any SOWs?
I do. Let me see if I can bring one up.
While he's looking for that, did anyone have any questions about the scoping? Nope. Okay. Good deal. So we'll take a look at the scope and then, or one of the SOWs, and then we'll probably take a quick break in between these, this and the next section. But just give us a second here. We'll find a SOW that we can bring up. Unless they've totally locked Ivan out.
Okay, I do have one.
Yeah, if you want to share it out, I can take over and I can keep talking about it unless you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to skip the customer info.
That was my problem. I only had the customer ones.
All right, let me share this one.
Okay.
Oh, wrong screen. Give me a second. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
All right. So this is a typical statement of work that we would produce. Kind of has a list of the tasks that we've agreed to do. This one is broken down and also into the hours. Not all of them will have the hours listed. This might have been more of a custom one, but this, it says it was an upgrade and then consultancy. So this one looks like it was probably a custom one. Essentially, we're calling out the guidelines. So inside of the statement of work, one of the key kind of concepts is the guidelines. Guidelines are the deliverables. We're typically saying we're going to do up to a certain amount of, agents. That would be a guideline. So if we had it listed as, a pilot deployment to the Mac agent of up to, 40 or 50 devices, that would be a guideline to help protect you from getting roped into having to deploy to all of their devices. You wouldn't want to get into a project where, it slowly keeps creeping out to being, 20 weeks when, you've done the initial 40 devices and you should already be done. So it just helps protect you. Also gives them an idea of exactly what they'll have when it's finished. It's good to also have some common items in here. So the part that Ivan's going through right now is kind of talking about the actions that we would go through. This one was an upgrade, so we're evaluating the existing configuration, evaluating the database. Then we're going to install it. You'll see a couple, call-outs there, maximum of 2 for the consoles. So we're saying we're going to, be doing up to 2. If they have 20, well, we'll do 2 of them. They can do the other 18 of them. So we have the little pilot. Again, there's a guideline there saying up to 15 machines. And then also, if we have any kind of a prerequisites, there's stuff that we need them. It's always good to have some prerequisites in here. So, we're going to need access to their systems. We're going to need access to their database, any kind of prerequisites that you're going to need. And then in the consultancy is kind of a generic, hey, we need help with something. They're usually buying just basically some consultant time, and we're just basically putting some guidelines around what products we're going to do it. So, we're going to have a consultant that knows Endpoint Manager, Security Suite, Data Analytics, and Patch Manager. If we begin this project and they needed help with Service Desk or something else, well, that would have been outside of the scope. And so this helps protect us so that we're not spending a lot of time trying to work on something that is out of scope. So this is just kind of an example of a typical statement of work and how we configure it, really to do two things. One, to protect your business, to make sure that you have certain guidelines and that's all you need to deliver, and the customer has something they know, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to get when it's done. Okay, any questions about statement of works or the scoping?
So that one we just showed it was more of a time and material. This is the one that is outcome based.
Oh, good. You got another one. Cool. So yeah, that first one was time and material. You saw there were some hours. So these deliverables right here, this is the packages. So this is the endpoint manager basic package. So kind of like the slides that we saw earlier, this one is for one environment. Remember, the professional level is the one where it bumps up to 2 cores. Basic one is just 1 core. We're going to do 2 agent configurations. We're going to do a pilot up to 100 devices. We're going to be doing some dashboards and reporting, either the kind of the built-in or possibly extraction templates if they have extraction, and then also some patch management stuff. Projects. The packages will look like. Okay, any questions? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so this, yeah, this packages or these deliverables or statement of work as covered. They will the basic, professional, and enterprise level packages. Most of the outcome-based packages don't have a specific time that has been dictated in the statement of work because they're focused on outcome. But there is an internal guidelines that will tell you how much time you should plan for each of these activities. Again, those are available to you as part of the channel or the partner portal. Shane, are you on the line?
I saw in chat, jump off to another meeting.
Okay. I'll take that as an action for me to follow up with Shane to make sure that they are available for the panel.
Okay.
All right, so I need a break. You guys have had to listen to me, so why don't we take a quick break? How long should we take, Ivan?
Let's do either 10 to 15 minutes. Should be fine.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let's see. It's 10:12 now. Why don't we start at 10:25?
Okay.
Let's do 10:30. 10:30. So at the bottom of the hour.
Okay.
If you want
Sounds
to,
good.
Ivan, so
¿Alguna pregunta hasta ahora?
No.
Ok, entonces vamos a comenzar nuevamente ahora yo tengo las 10:12 de la mañana. en horario de Utah. Vamos a comenzar nuevamente a las 10:30.
Ok. Ok.
Muy bien.
¿Alguna pregunta de los paquetes o del material que Carson cubrió? Bueno.
Todo bien.
Ok.
Iván, una pregunta, digo, es un producto pues nuevo, el Ivanti Neuronals. Dentro de esos paquetes, sé que hay integración con el Endpoint Manager. ¿Tienen considerado ese tipo de integraciones dentro de los paquetes? Digo, es reciente el producto, pero también tiene integración, ¿no?
Sí, ese producto se hizo al inicio hace semana y media y todavía estamos en el proceso de cerrar qué exclusivamente va a incluir los nuevos paquetes de consultoría. Parte de eso es porque depende de lo que el cliente ya tenga, si es que tiene algunos productos de Ivanti o si no tiene, si tiene productos de otros proveedores en los cuales el Ivanti Neuron se puede hacer una integración. Entonces todo eso todavía tenemos que verificar los y el tiempo que se llevaría a cabo, digamos, para hacer una integración con SMS.
Ok. Gracias.
Muy bien, entonces vamos a estar regresando o comenzando nuevamente de aquí en 15 minutos.